So hello comrades, this is Wanga William, and this is our lesson number 4 of our project work. So I encourage you to continue subscribing to this YouTube channel. Don't forget the notification bell, continue liking and also sharing. So if we commence with our lesson number 4, remember we said for our lesson number 4 we are going to start from the components of projects. We are going to start from the components of projects. So what we call developing a project. So we see that before we continue with the components of projects, we must put into consideration or a recall about the general recall about the project characteristics. We said a project must have a definite start and a definite end. So once a project is started, it must be also ended. So, and we said once the end point is reached, the project is said to be done. So, and we find that we are doing this project work to come up with something which is new, and something which is new, that is the product which is solving the societal problem. So now we can see our components in details. In other words, to develop a project, we must know how to identify a given problem. In other words, we come up with a project after identifying the problem. It is the problem first. From the problem is where we come up with a project. So we have our first component, which we are calling the identification of a project. Identification of a project, and this one involves what? It involves problem identification. So that's what I've told you. To come up with a project, I must know the problem must be available. In other words, you cannot come up with a project when the problem is not available. So it involves the title, and that title must be aligned to the theme of a subject. It must be aligned to the theme of what? Of a subject. Now you find that a theme is something which is wide. You find that subjects like essay, biology, physics. A theme is like a branch. So therefore there we shall focus to a chapter. So the title must be aligned to a theme or a chapter. So for subjects having broad themes, so you focus to a chapter. And also it involves the objectives. Before the objectives, we must have the aim, the main objective. Why do you want to carry out that project, and also the core objectives. So what I'm calling the objectives here, what to be achieved. So now we shall upload a lesson about how to carry out project, how teachers can guide learners to come up with good projects. In other words, when you tell you move around, let's say school, a given community, and come up with a problem, and the learner identifies a problem, before telling a learner that you can begin solving that problem, ask the learner, what is your problem statement? Let the learner tell you the problem statement. Secondly, ask the learner, is that problem, what is the chapter or theme on which your project is going to focus on? Because we have said that if I'm having a problem, I have identified a problem. That is a problem statement. I have identified a problem. Now that I can come up with a project. But ask the learner, is that project, which chapter, which chapter or theme is your project focusing on to? If the learner can tell you that, then ask the learner the last question: what is the title of your project? So we shall discuss all that, and we see even how can we come up with titles of projects. So lessons will be uploaded. Just continue subscribing and tapping the notification bell. So if we continue, the next component we are seeing, that the component of a project, we are seeing that it is called organization. If the learner is past what we are calling identification of a project, and they've seen what is involved within identification of a project, then guide the learners to what we call organization. And this one involves what? Planning. It involves the planning. It involves planning, it involves methodology, it involves resources, drafting, implementation, creating a portfolio, and documenting. In other words, most of the marks are in what we call the organization. And you find that from the organization we can remove like phases. Phase 1, which we call the planning phase, and we know the planning phase is taking like it is taking 22 marks. There is also the implementation phase, which is phase number 2, and that one can take 33 marks or 36 marks. Then you find that also, do we see a product may not be within here, because yes, but if we have the planning, methodology, resources, drafting, you find that at the end of this organization, you are starting the what? You are starting our product. So the phases can be removed like that. If we continue, we have what we call developing a project report, writing a project report. So before we go to this last step of the component of a project, you find that within the other organization, at the end of the organization, up to this last step, the product is within, and the product may take 26 to 23 marks. If the product is taking 26 marks, ensure that the implementation phase is taking 33 marks. So we shall see all that in details. The lesson will be uploaded. If our implementation is taking 36, make sure that the product takes 23 marks. So we shall see the way how we can mark projects. So all lessons will be uploaded. So our last component is what we are calling report writing. Is what we are calling report writing. So we have seen for our components, or when we want to develop a project, we must keep in mind the identification of a project, and we have seen identification of a project. We have seen there is problem identification, and once the problem is identified, means that the learner can come up with a project. But how can you test that that project is a good project? It can solve a problem which is being identified. The learner must tell you the chapter or theme on which that project is focusing, and second, learner must tell you the title. So then the teacher, you can allow a learner to continue on the next step, which you are calling organization. And this one you have seen, you can remove phases. The planning phase, you can remove the implementation phase. So if I've planned it, the methods, the time, the resources I'm going to use, the efficiency, the manner I'll be using, the resources, all that, you can find that I can implement my project very well. I can work out to come out with my product very well. Keeping in mind, a learner has to create a portfolio. So we saw in lesson number 1, we introduced ourselves what a portfolio is. So in other, if we try to remind ourselves, say the portfolio involves the developmental stages when a learner is carrying out the project work. And lastly, we have said report writing. So those are our components of our projects. So if we continue, we are seeing phases of a project report, in other words, and here we have even the mark allocation of each phase. So let this be our lesson number 5. So we shall start from there, lesson number 5. So I encourage you to continue subscribing to this YouTube channel, like, and also share to others. Thank you.